Hey there. Ready for something really interesting? Like we're gonna peek behind the curtain today. We're going deep on individual psychology, but straight from the source. Like we've got a Chinese translation of Alfred Adler's "What Life Should Mean to You." It's gonna be awesome.
Oh, it's a fascinating book. And you're right, it's like getting a backstage pass to one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century, but without having to wade through, all the dense academic jargon.
Exactly. That's the beauty of this deep dive. We
Yeah.
get to distill those really powerful ideas, and we'll make them relevant to you. Our listeners. So let's jump right in. One of the things that really struck me about Adler is how he kind of flips the script on traditional psychology.
Yeah, he does. I mean, while Freud was all about those deep-seated drives in the unconscious, right? Adler saw our primary motivation a bit differently. He believed it all boils down to something called Gemeinschaftsgefühl.
Whoa, hold on. Gemeinschaftsgefühl. Okay, that's a mouthful. What does that even mean?
It's German. It basically means social interest or community feeling. Think of it like that feeling you get when you're helping someone in need. You know, like you're volunteering at a soup kitchen or something. That sense of connection, like a shared purpose. That's what Adler believed drives us.
So instead of just focusing on me, myself, and I, it's about understanding our place in the bigger picture.
Yeah, exactly. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Adler believed that even people who, well, behave in ways we might consider bad, like criminals, they actually understand cooperation at some level.
Wait, so they understand cooperation, but they're still criminals. I don't get it.
It's like they haven't learned how to, express it in a healthy way. It's like imagine you've got this internal operating system running in the background, shaping how you react to things. That's what Adler called our lifestyle.
Lifestyle, okay. But not like fancy cars and designer clothes. I'm guessing we're talking
Yeah,
about something deeper.
Right. And even people who make harmful choices are, in a way, trying to find their place, trying to feel significant, even if they go about it the wrong way.
So it's not that they don't understand cooperation. It's that they're choosing, dysfunctional ways to achieve it.
To belong. That's a great way to put it. And it makes you think about how we each define success, right? Is it
Yeah.
about personal gain or contributing to something bigger?
It really is. I think deep down we all crave that sense of belonging, that connection. But speaking of how our experiences shape us, Adler also had some pretty fascinating insights about feelings of inferiority, didn't he?
He did, and this is where Adler, he really challenges some of our assumptions. He saw feelings of inferiority as a totally normal human experience.
Really? So it's not a bad thing.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
He believed they can actually be a source of growth. Think about a time when you felt inadequate. Did it ever push you to learn something new or to try harder?
Yeah, I guess so.
That's Adler's point. These feelings, when channeled correctly, they can motivate us to improve.
So it's not about feeling less than in a negative way. It's about recognizing that we all have room to grow.
Exactly. And the book, it uses some pretty powerful examples to illustrate this, like the child who witnessed his brother's death. And then he developed this fear of open spaces.
Wow, that's a heartbreaking example. But it shows how our early experiences, even traumatic ones, can really shape us.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just the event itself. It's how he interpreted it. He carried those feelings of, you know, vulnerability and helplessness into other areas of his life.
It's like that early experience created this lens through which he saw the world. It makes you think, what about your own fears? Think about it. Could they be linked to early experiences where you felt, I don't know, inadequate? Or like you were out of your depth?
It's a good question to ask ourselves. And this brings us to another concept that Adler explored, this idea of lifestyle. Imagine having a blueprint, an internal operating system that shapes how you approach, well, everything. Challenges, relationships, the whole world.
Ah, yes. Lifestyle. But not in the sense of fancy cars and designer clothes, right?
Right. It's a deeper pattern of behavior, beliefs, that kind of thing.
And Adler believed this lifestyle forms really early, doesn't it? Like when we're just little kids.
Exactly. By the time we're 4 or 5 years old, it starts solidifying. And he even believed our earliest memories, even if they're not perfectly accurate, can give us clues about this blueprint.
I remember reading about this woman in the book. She had this vivid memory of being replaced by a younger sibling. And she carried this feeling of being replaced throughout her life. She felt the need to prove her worth, and it led to some self-sabotaging behaviors.
That's a classic example, right? Even if the memory itself isn't completely factual, the way we remember it, interpret it, can be really revealing.
So deep divers, I've got a little challenge for you. What's your earliest memory? And how might it reflect your lifestyle? I'm going to do it too. It's a fun little exercise. It gets you thinking.
It does. And speaking of shaping who we become, Adler was incredibly passionate about education.
Okay, but not just any kind of education, right? He had some pretty specific ideas.
He did. He believed that the traditional systems of his time, they were missing the mark. He felt they didn't really address individual needs. In fact, he worried they might even contribute to those feelings of inferiority we were talking about.
So instead of just stuffing our brains with information, it's about creating an environment where individuals, they feel valued.
Exactly. He was a huge advocate for fostering Gemeinschaftsgefühl within the classroom, that sense of community and belonging. He believed education should equip individuals with the skills to cooperate, contribute to society, and find their place.
The book had this amazing example, right? This troubled student. He completely transforms after experiencing genuine understanding and support from his teacher and classmates.
It's a powerful illustration of how just a change in approach can make such a difference. One that focuses on nurturing that sense of belonging. And Adler's emphasis on cooperation didn't stop at the school doors either.
He saw the workplace as a place for collaboration too, right?
Oh, absolutely. He envisioned a society where collaboration was at the forefront. A truly cooperative society that would strive to eliminate unemployment, ensuring everyone has the opportunity to contribute.
That's a huge vision. It makes you wonder, what if you were designing the ideal workplace? What would you include to foster that kind of cooperation and belonging and, well, that sense of purpose?
It's something worth considering. How do we create spaces where people feel valued and motivated and connected to a shared purpose? That's a big question.
It is. And it reminds me of what we were discussing earlier about how even criminals have that, that twisted sense of cooperation. Could we apply that same thinking to the workplace? Like, are there people who are so focused on getting ahead that they end up, hurting the team?
That's a great point. It's like someone might think they're a go-getter by, taking all the credit or maybe undermining their colleagues, but they might actually be harming the team's progress.
Exactly. It's a subtle but important point, isn't it?
It is. And Adler would likely say those actions, even if they seem beneficial on the surface, they stem from a place of insecurity and, well, a limited understanding of true success. He might suggest that a lack of genuine cooperation, even in a seemingly, functional environment, can be a source of dysfunction.
That's so insightful. It reminds us that true success, both for ourselves and for our teams, really hinges on that understanding of, well, cooperation and social interest. We thrive when we understand that our well-being is interconnected. But speaking of success, I'm really curious about Adler's ideas on, life goals. He believed we all develop this unique set of goals, often unconsciously, that drive our choices, right?
He did. He saw these goals, which are often rooted in those early childhood experiences, as the driving force behind our actions. They become the blueprints for how we approach life's challenges and how we seek fulfillment.
And it's not always about money or fame. It could be anything that gives us that sense of purpose and significance.
Absolutely. For some people, it might be about social status. For others, it's creative expression. And for others, it might be about dedicating their lives to a cause. The key is that these goals, they become the driving force, behind our choices.
And what's fascinating is that Adlerian psychology gives us tools to understand those goals even when we aren't consciously aware of them.
Right? Yeah, it does. It's like we all become detectives, trying to decipher those hidden messages.
I love that analogy. And one of the most fascinating tools, I think, is the analysis of early recollections.
Yes. Even those, fragmented or symbolic early memories, they can offer incredible insights.
It's like those memories are, like little windows into our subconscious.
Exactly. And by examining them carefully, we can often understand the goals that are driving us and even uncover the roots of some of our challenges.
Like, let's say someone repeatedly remembers feeling left out or excluded as a child. Could that suggest a life goal that's really focused on, seeking validation, thinking belonging? And then maybe that drives them to seek approval, even in ways that aren't truly fulfilling.
That's a really insightful observation. It's possible, their actions and choices, even those that might seem counterproductive, they could be unconsciously geared toward fulfilling that need.
Wow. It's amazing how our past can have such a, a subtle influence on our present, even if we aren't fully aware of it. And speaking of understanding our motivations, Adler's approach to therapy was pretty unique, wasn't it?
It was. Unlike some traditional approaches that focus on analyzing past trauma or digging into deep-seated conflicts, Adlerian therapy, it takes a more collaborative and goal-oriented approach.
So instead of spending years digging into the past, it's more about understanding how our current goals and aspirations are shaping our present. It's almost like rewriting our own story.
I like that. It's about empowering people to make choices that align with their goals and contribute to their well-being and the well-being of those around them. It's a hopeful perspective, suggesting we all have the capacity to change.
I love that. And this brings us to another tool Adler used, right?
Yeah.
To understand our goals and motivations. Dream analysis.
Ah, yes. Dreams. But Adler, he had a different take on them than, say, Freud. Freud saw dreams as, symbolic representations of repressed desires. But Adler, he believed they served a more practical purpose.
Okay, so what was Adler's take then? What did he think dreams were trying to tell us?
He believed they were problem-solving tools, working on a subconscious level. Like, imagine your mind is rehearsing different approaches to challenges or exploring potential solutions while you're asleep. Dreams provide this safe space to confront fears, experiment with behaviors, and mentally prepare for future situations.
That's incredible. So it's like our minds are running simulations while we sleep, trying to find the best way forward. But, how can we actually, figure out what our dreams are trying to tell us?
Adler, he cautioned against getting too caught up in, specific symbols or images. He thought paying attention to the overall emotions and themes could be really revealing, though. They often offer clues about our current concerns and the goals we're striving for.
So if someone frequently dreams about being unprepared for a test, it could indicate a deeper fear of failure.
Exactly. And by understanding the root of those feelings, maybe stemming from their lifestyle or early experiences, they can start to develop, strategies for overcoming them.
It's like dreams are giving us a cheat sheet, highlighting those areas where we need to focus.
That's a great way to put it. And it brings us back to that central theme in Adlerian psychology, the impact of our social environment. Adler, he placed a lot of emphasis on how our interactions, especially within our families, shape us.
So it's not just nature versus nurture. It's about how those early social experiences, like within our family, shape our whole, worldview, our outlook on life.
Exactly. He saw the family as a microcosm of society, where we first encounter cooperation, competition, and, all the complexities of social dynamics. He even had some really interesting observations about how birth order can influence our personalities.
Oh, that's fascinating. So it's not just about being the oldest or the youngest, but about the specific, dynamics within each family.
Exactly. For example, firstborn children, they often have their parents' undivided attention early on, so they might develop a really strong sense of responsibility, and they may tend towards leadership.
So they might be drawn to careers where they can, be in charge.
Exactly. But that same sense of responsibility can also lead to, perfectionism and a need for control.
It's like they feel the pressure to live up to certain expectations, being the first, the best, that kind of thing. What about middle children?
Middle children, they're always navigating that space between their older and younger siblings, so they often become very adaptable. And good at negotiation, they're always looking for ways to, stand out.
So they might thrive in roles that require flexibility and thinking outside the box.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But that same drive to, differentiate themselves can lead to rebelliousness or a constant need for stimulation. They might be drawn to careers where they can, shake things up a bit.
Well, what about the youngest children? I feel like they often have this charm and charisma,
It's true. Youngest children, they're often the most pampered, so they tend to be more outgoing. They're natural entertainers. They're skilled at building relationships.
They're always looking for that adoration, But of course, these are just general tendencies.
Right. Every individual is unique, shaped by their family, their choices, and their experiences in the world.
It makes you wonder how much of who we are today is a reflection of those early family dynamics.
It's a fascinating question. Adler's emphasis on the family constellation, it encourages us to look beyond just our individual traits and consider the whole web of relationships that have shaped us.
It's like our families are the training ground for life, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're where we get our first lessons in navigating relationships, handling challenges, finding our place. And speaking of finding our place, Adler believed that need to belong was as essential as food and shelter.
Oh, absolutely. He saw social isolation as a major contributor to psychological distress. And I think he'd be really concerned about some of the trends we're seeing today with rising rates of loneliness.
It's not just about being physically present with others. It's about feeling truly connected, right? Like you have a role to play.
Precisely. Adler believed that a healthy individual, they strive to build meaningful relationships, contribute to the well-being of others, experience a sense of shared purpose. It's that understanding that we're all interconnected.
This brings us back to that Gemeinschaftsgefühl, doesn't it? That sense of, social interest, that feeling of being connected to something larger than ourselves.
Exactly. And Adler, he believed that this Gemeinschaftsgefühl isn't something we're born with, it's something we cultivate through our actions and interactions.
So it's not about being inherently selfless. It's about recognizing that our well-being is fundamentally connected to the well-being of others.
That's a great way to put it. And that brings us to another really important concept, the inferiority complex. But, it's important to understand what he really meant by that term, because it's often misinterpreted.
Okay, yeah, let's clear up any confusion. So what did Adler actually mean by inferiority complex?
Well, he believed that feeling inferior is a universal human experience. It's a natural result of starting life as completely dependent infants. We all begin feeling small and helpless, relying on others for survival.
So it's not about having low self-esteem, but about recognizing those areas where we feel less competent.
Precisely. And when those feelings are channeled effectively, they can drive us to learn, improve, and grow.
But when they become excessive or we don't address them in a healthy way, that's when we can develop an inferiority complex, right? It's not just about feeling less than, it's about letting those feelings control us.
Exactly. And this is where Adlerian therapy can play a role. It helps people understand those feelings, challenge the negative beliefs, and develop a more balanced sense of self-worth.
It's a good reminder that we all have those areas where we might feel less confident, but they don't have to hold us back. And speaking of overcoming challenges, Adler also had this concept of striving for superiority, didn't he?
He did, and this is another concept that's often misunderstood. It's not about wanting to be better than everyone else or, dominating others.
So what did Adler mean by striving for superiority?
He was talking about our natural human drive to improve ourselves, overcome obstacles, and contribute to, the betterment of society.
So it's more about striving for excellence, both in ourselves and in the world, about making a positive impact.
Exactly. And he believed this drive, when it's channeled effectively, it can lead to great achievements and a really profound sense of fulfillment. But when it's distorted or driven by a deep sense of inadequacy, it can lead to unhealthy behaviors.
It's like the difference between wanting to win a race because you love the challenge, versus wanting to win just to prove you're better than everyone else.
That's a perfect analogy. And this is another area where therapy can be incredibly helpful. It helps individuals understand what's driving them, identify any unhealthy patterns, and then develop a more balanced approach to life.
This makes me think about the role of the therapist in, Adlerian therapy. You mentioned it's more collaborative.
It is. Adler believed that relationship was really important, the one between the therapist and the client. It's not about the therapist, acting as this expert who analyzes and interprets. It's more about creating a partnership, a shared journey.
So it's a more equal relationship.
Exactly. Adler, he believed the therapist should approach the client with empathy, respect, a genuine desire to understand. It creates a safe space where the client can feel heard and understood and empowered to make changes.
It sounds like that approach would really foster trust.
It does. And this approach, it's essential for facilitating what Adler called the courage to be imperfect.
Oh, I love that phrase. What exactly did he mean by that?
Well, he believed one of the biggest obstacles we face is, our fear of failure and our constant pursuit of perfection. We get so caught up in comparing ourselves to others and trying to live up to these impossible standards. He argued that true courage lies in embracing our imperfections, accepting our limitations, recognizing that we are all works in progress.
It's about letting go of that need to be perfect and embracing the beauty of being perfectly imperfect. What a powerful message.
It really is. And this courage to be imperfect, it empowers us to take risks, learn from mistakes, and grow into more authentic versions of ourselves.
That's so freeing, it takes the pressure off and allows us to actually enjoy the journey. And speaking of journeys, it seems like Adler believed our social environment has a huge impact on who we become.
He did. He saw us as social beings, influenced not just by our individual experiences, but by the broader social context in which we live. Think about the cultural norms, the values, the expectations, all of those things shape us.
So it's not just about understanding individual psychology, it's about understanding those external factors at play too.
Yes. Adler, he believed that our social environment could either help or hinder our well-being. Supportive communities foster belonging, encourage cooperation, and create opportunities for growth. But environments rife with competition, inequality, or a lack of support, those can lead to, feelings of alienation and distress. It's fascinating to think about how our surroundings might be shaping us.
It is. We often think about our personal choices and experiences, but we forget about those, invisible forces that are at play.
And this brings us to another important concept in Adlerian psychology, the search for meaning, that purpose in life.
Ah, purpose. That elusive thing we all seem to be searching for. What did Adler believe about finding our purpose?
Well, he saw it as a fundamental human drive, a sense of purpose. It gives our lives direction, motivation, a sense of connection to something bigger.
It's like having a guiding star, right?
Yeah.
Something to aim for.
Exactly. And here's the fascinating part. He didn't believe that we just find our purpose out there in the world. He believed we create it.
Wait, so it's not about, stumbling upon our preordained destiny. It's about actively shaping our lives in a way that feels, meaningful.
Exactly. Our work, relationships, creative pursuits, our contributions to our communities, all of these things, they contribute to our sense of purpose.
So it's about recognizing that we have the power to, craft a life that aligns with our values.
Precisely. And that's such a hopeful message. We are not just passengers on this journey, we are the drivers. But of course, there are times when we feel, lost or stuck. And that's where Adlerian therapy can be helpful. It helps us identify those roadblocks, challenge those limiting beliefs, and tap into our inner compass.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I'm seeing the world, and even myself, a bit differently already.
That's great to hear. And it's a reminder that learning is, it's a journey. There's always more to explore, more to discover.
There is. I'm excited to keep diving into Adler's ideas.
Yeah.
But for now, let's take a pause. Think about what's resonated with you, what sparked your curiosity. We'll be back soon to continue exploring.
Looking forward to it. Until then, see if you can, spot any of these principles playing out in your own life. It's everywhere once you start looking.
Welcome back. It's great to continue our deep dive into Adlerian psychology. I'm really eager to pick up where we left off and, explore some more of Adler's groundbreaking ideas.
Me too. Before the break, we were talking about, the power of goals and the search for meaning. It really got me thinking about how we create meaning in our lives and how that, connects to our sense of purpose. That's a great connection. Adler believed that purpose and meaning, they're deeply intertwined. He saw purpose as a driving force, an overarching aim that guides us and gives our lives direction.
Like a compass, right, helping us navigate. But what about meaning? How did Adler actually define that?
He believed that meaning isn't something we just find out there, it's something we create through our engagement with the world. Finding value in our experiences, connecting with something larger than ourselves, and, making a contribution.
So it's not about stumbling onto our, preordained purpose, but about actively shaping our lives in a way that feels meaningful.
Exactly. And he believed that Gemeinschaftsgefühl, that feeling of social interest, it's essential for creating meaning. When we feel like we belong and we're contributing to something larger, our lives just feel more meaningful.
That makes sense. Like when you volunteer,
Yeah.
or you help someone out,
Yeah.
those actions create a sense of purpose and meaning because they connect us to something beyond ourselves.
That's a great example. And it highlights how Adlerian psychology emphasizes our social context, We're not isolated, we're interconnected. Our relationships and contributions, they play a huge role.
I'm seeing how all these ideas really connect. It's cool. But, how does this idea of creating meaning play out in our everyday lives? What are some things we can actually do?
That's a great question. Adler believed that finding work that's fulfilling, building strong relationships, and contributing to our communities, those are all really crucial. He saw them as, fundamental tasks.
So it's not about a one-size-fits-all solution. It's about figuring out what works for you.
Exactly. It's about identifying our values, our strengths, and our passions, and finding ways to express those in the world. It could be through our careers, our hobbies, volunteering, even how we interact with people.
It sounds like Adler was a big believer in, taking action, engaging with the world.
He was. He saw us as active agents, creators of our own lives and our own meaning. And that brings us to another powerful concept, the idea of the creative self.
Okay, the creative self. I like the sound of that already. What did Adler mean by that?
He believed that each of us has this incredible capacity to shape our own lives. It's not about being an artist, in the traditional sense, but about recognizing we have choices. We can decide how we want to respond to things, and that we have the power to create a life that aligns with our values.
So we're all artists in a way.
Exactly. And this creative power, it's not just about big decisions. It's in every moment, in every choice we make, from how we interact with a stranger to how we approach a challenge at work.
It's about recognizing that we're not just like passive recipients of our experience, but active participants in creating it.
Exactly. And that leads us to another really important aspect, the concept of social responsibility. Adler, he believed that we're all interconnected, that we have a responsibility to contribute to the well-being of society, as a whole.
That makes me think of Gemeinschaftsgefühl, that idea of community, social interest.
Yes, social responsibility, it's the action that comes from that feeling.
Yes.
It's about recognizing that our actions have an impact on others and that we can create a more, just and compassionate world.
So it's not just about focusing on our own well-being. It's about understanding that our well-being is like tied to the well-being of others.
Precisely. Adler, he believed that true fulfillment, it doesn't just come from individual achievement. It comes from contributing to something larger.
Like that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Exactly. And this brings us to another important concept for understanding Adler, the idea of cooperation. He believed it was essential, both for individuals and for society. He saw it as the foundation for healthy relationships, strong communities, a more peaceful world.
So it's not just about working together, it's about recognizing that we're like stronger together. That collaboration can lead to more creativity.
Absolutely. He believed that cooperation allows us to really leverage our individual strengths to achieve things that would be impossible alone. He actually saw competition as a destructive force, often driven by insecurity and fear, whereas cooperation, it lets us tap into our shared humanity.
It makes me wonder what Adler would think about, how things are today, where competition and individualism are like so celebrated.
It's hard to say, but Adler was a very optimistic person. He really believed in the human capacity for cooperation, that we can learn to overcome those, tendencies towards competition and self-interest.
So maybe he'd say we need to reframe our idea of success to really highlight the value of, collaboration.
Exactly. He might encourage us to shift our focus from individual achievement to collective well-being, to celebrate those who, lift others up.
I love that. It's a much more inspiring vision of success. And it makes me think about finding work that aligns with that, cooperation and contributing to society. We spend so much of our lives working. It seems like we should find something that feels meaningful.
You've hit on a really important point. Adler believed that finding fulfilling work is essential for our well-being, our sense of purpose. He didn't see work as just a means to an end, but as an opportunity to, express our talents, contribute to the world.
So it's not just about a paycheck. It's about finding something that, resonates.
Exactly. And he recognized that, when people find work that's fulfilling, they're more engaged, more productive, and just more satisfied with their lives. But when they feel like their work is meaningless, well, it can lead to a lot of dissatisfaction.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's easy to get caught up in the rat race and lose sight of what really matters.
It is. And Adler believed therapy could help people, reconnect with their values, explore their passions, find work that aligns with their skills and interests.
It's like finding that, that sweet spot where our passions and skills meet the needs of the world. What a great idea. But it also makes me think about courage, like the courage to make a change, to pursue something that feels, meaningful, even if it's scary.
You've brought up another key element of Adlerian psychology, courage. Adler, he believed courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in spite of it. He saw it as essential for growth and fulfillment.
So it's not about being fearless, but about, recognizing that fear is normal and choosing to move forward.
Exactly. He believed every step we take outside our comfort zone strengthens us. And he saw courage as something we can cultivate, not just, something some people have and others don't.
So how can we, cultivate courage?
He thought surrounding ourselves with supportive people, challenging our limiting beliefs, and practicing mindfulness are all really helpful. And he saw therapy as a safe space to explore those fears, develop coping skills, and build the confidence to step outside our comfort zone.
This makes me think of the courage to be imperfect again. It seems so central to, developing real courage.
It is. When we let go of the need to be perfect, embrace those imperfections, well, it frees us to take risks, learn from our mistakes, be more authentic. And vulnerability, that's so important for building courage.
It's a beautiful reminder that our imperfections aren't weaknesses. They're opportunities.
And it brings us back to the importance of connection. When we feel supported and loved for who we are, flaws and all, well, it just makes it easier to be brave, to face the world.
This is so inspiring. It's making me rethink, what it means to live a fulfilling life.
That's the power of Adlerian psychology. It offers this framework for understanding ourselves and the world in a way that promotes growth, compassion, and a deep sense of purpose.
Before we wrap up this section, there's one more thing that's been on my mind. We've talked about cooperation a lot, but I'm wondering, can we be too cooperative? Like, is there ever a point where putting the group above our own needs becomes unhealthy?
That's a really great question. It's one that Adler himself actually thought about a lot. He didn't believe individuals should always sacrifice their needs for others, He thought healthy cooperation involves a balance between our needs and the needs of the group. It's about finding a way to contribute to the common good without, losing ourselves.
So it's not about selflessness versus selfishness. It's about finding that, middle ground.
Exactly. It's recognizing that we're all in this together, but that we each have a unique role to play. Finding that balance, it can be tough. And that's another area where therapy can be helpful. It provides a space to, explore those tensions, clarify our values, and find ways to live in alignment with both our needs and, our desire to contribute.
Sounds like finding that balance is a lifelong journey.
It is, and it's worth it. When we find that balance, when we contribute our gifts while honoring our own needs, that's when we thrive. And that's what Adlerian psychology is all about, helping people find their place and create a life that's both, meaningful and fulfilling.
This has been such a great exploration of Adlerian psychology. I'm already starting to see how, these ideas can be applied to my life, to my relationships, my work, my sense of purpose.
I'm glad to hear that. And it's a reminder that, there's always more to learn.
There is. I'm excited to dive into the next layer. But for now, let's pause. Take a moment to reflect. Think about how this knowledge has shifted your perspective. What are you taking away from this? How can you, use these ideas to create positive change in your own life?
I'm looking forward to continuing this. Until then, keep those minds curious and keep those hearts open.
Welcome back for our final segment on this deep dive into, Adlerian psychology.
It's been an amazing journey.
It has. We've covered so much ground, from that sense of Gemeinschaftsgefühl to the power of cooperation and, even the courage to be imperfect.
And now we're ready to explore how we can actually put these concepts into practice, to enhance our lives and make a positive impact.
I'm excited to get into that. But before we do, there's one thing that's, it's been on my mind.
Okay, what is it?
Well, we've talked a lot about how our childhood experiences can really shape us. They shape our lifestyle and our approach to the world.
Yeah, Adler saw those early years as really foundational. It's when we develop our core beliefs about ourselves, others, and the world.
But what about those of us who didn't have, the most ideal childhoods? Does that mean we're stuck with those patterns forever?
That's a great question, and it's really relevant to Adlerian therapy. While Adler recognized the impact of early experiences, he also believed we can change, we can grow throughout our lives.
So it's not about, being a prisoner of our past. It's about recognizing those patterns and actively choosing to, rewrite the script.
Exactly. Adlerian therapy helps us understand those early influences, but it also empowers us to challenge them, to create new, healthier patterns.
We have this internal operating system that's been, programmed with certain beliefs and behaviors.
Yeah.
And we can reprogram it.
I like that. That's a great analogy. And therapy gives us the tools to do just that.
That's so empowering to think that we're not, permanently stuck. We can evolve.
We can. And that brings us to another concept, safeguarding tendencies.
Right. We talked about those a little bit before. Can you remind us what those are and how they, how they show up in our lives?
Safeguarding tendencies, they're basically defense mechanisms. Ways we protect ourselves from feeling inadequate or anxious or afraid of failing.
So they're like psychological shields.
Exactly. And they might be helpful in the short term, but ultimately they hold us back. They prevent us from really engaging with life and reaching our full potential.
And they often show up as, procrastination.
Yeah.
Or blaming others, that kind of thing.
Right. Someone who's constantly procrastinating, they might be trying to avoid the possibility of failure.
Oh, I know that one. Or someone who withdraws from social interactions. They might be trying to protect themselves from rejection.
Exactly. It's like we're avoiding those uncomfortable feelings, but we might be creating bigger problems down the road.
That's so true. So how do we, deal with those tendencies?
Well, Adler believed it's important to, identify them, not to judge ourselves for having them, but to understand them. What are the fears and insecurities driving those behaviors?
So it's about developing self-awareness
Hmm.
and then finding, I don't know, healthier ways to cope with those feelings.
Exactly. And therapy can be a huge help. It gives us a safe space to explore those patterns, challenge those beliefs, and find new ways to cope.
It's recognizing that those defenses might helped us before, but maybe they're not serving us anymore.
Right. And it takes courage to, to let go of them, to face those fears and be vulnerable.
This brings us back to the courage to be imperfect.
It does. It takes courage to be authentic, to show up with all our, our flaws.
And the more we do that, the more we connect with others.
Exactly. Speaking of connection, how do you think Adlerian psychology views relationships?
Well, it seems like he saw them as, I don't know, essential.
He did. He believed that relationships are absolutely fundamental to human well-being. He saw them as like a mini version of society. It's where we learn about cooperation, empathy, responsibility.
So it's not just about romantic relationships, it's all kinds.
Yes. Friendships, family, colleagues, community members, all of them. Adler believed that healthy relationships, they're based on mutual respect, equality, and a shared purpose.
So it's not about one person having more power, it's about valuing each other.
Yes. And he saw those power struggles, those attempts to control, as really harmful.
It's about creating a dynamic where, both people feel seen, heard, valued for who they truly are.
Exactly, where they can grow together. Which makes me think about communication. Like, how do we navigate those inevitable conflicts?
Yeah. Misunderstandings happen. So how can we, deal with those in a way that actually makes the relationship stronger?
Adlerian psychology emphasizes open communication, active listening, and empathy.
So it's not just about, getting our own point across. It's about really trying to understand the other person.
Exactly. It's recognizing that we all have different experiences, different perspectives.
And approaching those differences with curiosity.
Yes. And being willing to compromise, to find solutions that work for both people.
This makes me think about forgiveness.
Forgiveness is huge. Adler believed that true forgiveness, it's not about condoning bad behavior. It's about letting go of the resentment, the bitterness.
It's realizing that holding on to anger hurts us more than anyone else.
It does. Forgiveness, it's an act of self-love.
And it's not always easy.
No, it takes courage and vulnerability. But it's so worth it. Because when we can forgive, we can heal, we can grow, and we can connect more deeply.
Relationships are a journey, aren't they? They take effort.
They do, but they're also incredibly rewarding. So we've talked about relationships, but what about work? How do these principles apply there?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I mean, work is such a big part of our lives.
It is. And Adler believed it should be more than just, a way to make money. He saw it as an opportunity to contribute, to use our talents, to feel a sense of purpose.
So it's not about, the corner office or the big paycheck. It's about finding work that, feels right.
Exactly. He believed fulfilling work involves cooperation, collaboration, a sense of purpose.
So instead of seeing colleagues as, competition, we should be focusing on working together.
Exactly. He believed when people feel that sense of belonging and purpose in their work, well, they're more engaged, more productive, and more satisfied.
I bet he wouldn't be a fan of, that cutthroat competitive culture you see in a lot of workplaces.
I don't think so. He would definitely advocate for something more collaborative, more supportive, where teamwork is valued and respect, and everyone's working towards a common goal.
This makes me think about finding a workplace that, shares those values. If you're in an environment that's super competitive, well, it's going to be harder to, embody these principles.
It's true. Finding that ideal workplace isn't always easy, but it's something to strive for. It's about finding a place where you feel valued, respected, and like your work matters.
And even if you haven't found that perfect place yet, it's about bringing those values into the workplace you're in, right? Like advocating for a more collaborative approach.
Exactly. Being a positive force for change wherever you are.
This has been such an incredible conversation. It's really shifted my perspective.
I'm so glad to hear that. Remember, learning is a journey.
It really is. As we wrap up, I want to thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. It's been amazing.
My pleasure. I hope it sparks some new ideas for everyone listening.
I think it has. And for our listeners, I encourage you to think about everything we've talked about. How does it resonate with you? How can you use these principles to, make a positive difference?
The journey of self-discovery and growth, it never ends. Embrace the challenges, celebrate the wins, and never stop striving for a more fulfilling, more connected life.
That's beautiful. And until next time, keep diving deep.